Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. There's always lots to do in Vermont when it comes to exploring our state's history and heritage. And starting next month, there'll be a new opportunity to learn about Vermont's past when the St. Albans Museum opens a new exhibition on farming in Franklin County. Today, we're going to get a bit of a preview and learn about other aspects of the museum with two guests. Joining me are Don McFeeters, who is a co-president of the museum's board of directors, and Alex Lenning, who is the museum's executive director. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, before we get into the details of the new exhibit, maybe Alex, you can give us a little bit of background about the museum itself.
So the St. Albans Historical Society was founded in 1966. It was a small group of community citizens who were interested in preserving their history. So they came together, and early meetings were actually held in members' homes, and they would talk about topics of the day or historical topics, things they were interested in. So that was in 1966. In 1971, we acquired the former Church Street Academy, which was a school that had operated from 1861 to 1969. And so that became the museum in 1971 and operates today. All volunteer at first, and we've sort of shifted now to professional staff in the last few years.
Wonderful. So, Don, what stories has the museum told over the past 50 years?
Been a variety of stories that we've included. The Civil War raid that occurred. We've told the story of the railroad development in St. Albans and the evolution that's occurred over time. We've also have one focused on the Smith family, which was the political and economic movers and shakers in the early times of St. Albans.
Well, of course, St. Albans is known as the Rail City, and at one point, it was the largest railway in New England.
That's correct. And it's still, it's the railroad city, and we still think of it as the premier location. Today, it's, a much smaller operation. I can recall there was 23 tracks that went across Lake Street.
No kidding.
And today, there's only one or two that go through there.
That's amazing. And so there's also, you mentioned other displays as well, including Sterling Weed, who's quite a local celebrity. He
passed away at, I believe, was 104.
Right.
He was a musical director, instructor. He had a band, and was just an important clog in the St. Albans and Franklin County arena.
And you mentioned the Smith family too, because there were a lot of really prominent local families at the time in St. Albans.
Yeah, Smith was certainly the premier one. One of the Smiths was governor during the Civil War period. They were the founder of the railroad, the builder of the railroad. They were the economic and political movers. They built manufacturing plants there around St. Albans, and they employed a huge number of people.
Also philanthropists. They gave us Taylor Park and the great fountain that we have on the green in St. Albans, and also farmers in the early 1900s.
And there's also too something called the medical room, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, so St. Albans has a neat history, two hospitals that eventually merged to become one. So we also have some connections to some larger stories. So if you recall the tale of Phineas Gage or Dr. Beaumont, those do have Vermont connections, and we share that as part of our exhibit.
And there's the military room as well, because St. Albans has quite a history of being first when it comes to the Civil War and answering the call.
It does. So, St. Albans residents, Vermonters, have been involved in conflicts from the Revolutionary War, to today. And so that room sort of celebrates their service, especially focusing on our unique role in the Civil War and the northernmost land action being the St. Albans raid in October 1864.
I like that room because it tries to bring in the local connection, the local relationship to these various wars. It isn't just an exhibit of uniforms or of battles. It's trying to share some of the local people that have been involved.
A lot of stories.
A lot of stories, yes.
And there's also too a historic classroom, which shows the classic desks and so forth.
Oh yeah, so the building, as I said, operated as a school for 100 years. So this gives you a window into Miss Cattell's room, who was one of the longtime and most beloved teachers in St. Albans area.
And so now you're adding a new exhibit, Farming in Franklin County. What's the overall purpose?
So it's really about making this connection to our culture and our heritage. Certainly Vermont has a strong agricultural identity. It's a part of our way of life, a part of who we are and where we've come from, certainly in Franklin County. And we wanted to tell that story. Originally envisioned it as the impact of farming and agriculture in St. Albans itself, and we very quickly realized this is also a story about surrounding communities, about Franklin County, and about northwestern Vermont. So we're fortunate that we were able to pull in this variety of regional stories about people's places and ideas that really give us a sense of, who we are as Vermonters and how that identity's changed over time.
And so where did these items come from?
We've been able to acquire photos and artifacts from families in the Franklin County area, well, really northwest Vermont, photos from a variety of different places. We're still in the process of collecting some of those, and we're looking for more that we can add as we kind of move forward. But they're coming from ordinary citizens out there who have an interest and have a story to tell.
I think that's my favorite part, Don, is this idea of community curation, that the people who live this or it's part of their family heritage or legacy are telling the story. There are a few items, of course, from our own collections, but the vast majority, as Don said, come from community members. We have 4 other local historical societies that have contributed objects, documents, and photographs. We've talked to state, local, and federal agencies who have all shared items with us as well. So it truly is a community effort.
And so what types of materials and information will people see when they go to this exhibit?
Well, Don mentioned photographs, and that's probably the primary piece of the exhibit. Is just the ability to tell the story through sharing photos of the landscape, environment, people, vintage tools and farm implements and those sorts of things. We also do actually have some objects and artifacts, so imagine pieces of old farm equipment, product labels and containers and those sorts of things, as well as supporting documents. So there's some really great newspaper articles, advertising materials from local producers and associated businesses and organizations. So it's a wide variety of things that really kind of give you this 3D sense of what farming was like 100 years ago, 50 years ago, and how it's sort of shifting today.
Why do you, and this I love because this is a special significance for you, Don.
This is an FFA jacket, the blue jacket. I was an FFA member through high school, and that was really where I got involved with leadership development and leadership training through the FFA program, and have continued on through my college days and have continued involved with community service activities. I credit a lot of things to that FFA program that I started when I was in high school, and I went to BFA in St. Albans in high school.
And it's an organization that's still active today.
Still active today. Unfortunately, it's not in BFA in St. Albans, but there's a chapter in Missisquoi and Swanton, and Highgate, and one in Enosburg.
Why do you think it's important for folks to come and see these artifacts from back in the day?
There's a sense and there's a story there. Where have we come from? We often think of, we're here today, what took place 50 years or 100 years ago. And so what we want to do is to tell that story, share that story, and have an appreciation of the importance of farming in the Franklin County, economically, socially. Agriculture was the moving force in Franklin County for many years, both on the farms and every single town. They were the leaders. They were what was making it happen. Then there was a lot of ag business that supported those farms. And so we want to tell that story.
I think it's about the culture. Don's really hitting about how agriculture has, political, social, economic impact on our community. It's still relevant today, which is why I think that story is so important. Agriculture is still a big part of our modern economic identity. I think it's unique because it kind of brings in these stories of community involvement at various levels. So, when people talk about agriculture today, they talk about the locavore movement, or they talk about farm to table. Well, where does that come from? Family farms that were producing, local businesses that were processors, or made deliveries, or packaged and created containers and those sorts of things, but also the community organizations. So what did it mean to be a part of the Grange, for example, as part of your social life as well as your professional life? So we're really happy that it's about bridging these stories and these connections about our identity and culture, both past, but also something that's relevant to today's conversation about who we are.
And there are many farm organizations that have existed over the years, and many of them still continue to exist. Farm Bureau, Alex mentioned Grange, St. Albans Cooperative, which still is a very ongoing operation. There's other companies that are no longer there, but had an important piece. Agway, for example, they had both a feed manufacturing plant, a fertilizer plant. They had Worthmore Feed, which was a major ingredient in St. Albans City, providing jobs as well as providing feed. Many of these kinds of structures have come and gone, and I think it's important to reflect back and have an appreciation and understanding of what has occurred in the past, because that affects what happens today and what will happen in the future.
Let's talk a little bit about maple, because there's a significant maple history in Franklin County as well.
Yeah, maple is a major maple producer in this country. It is the leading producing county, and Quebec, Canada, of course, is the premier producer. We have seen the technology that has really changed things. Maple used to be a complement or a supplement to dairy farms.
Right.
It provided money for taxes. It provided money for seed and fertilizer in the spring. Today, dairy is much more of a standalone operation, and maple is a operation in different individuals coming from different backgrounds own the maple bushes, and the size is very much different than they used to be.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the immigrant families who started and owned many of these farms.
Yeah, all of us were immigrants at one point. I mean, my own family came from Ireland, and we can point to a number of other people, but the real big influx of immigrants were the French Canadians that came over here in the early and 40s, and they constituted the farming community in Franklin County. They were the large group that they came in, and they came in as employees on farms, and they evolved and ended up owning farms, and they ended up also becoming the leaders in the community. They ended up being the leaders in the farm organizations, and they still are an important component. They had large families, and you can find a number of families that really have expanded well beyond, the husband and wife. But extremely important connection to Franklin County.
I think that's part of the purpose of the exhibit, right? Is to tell these stories, to show how farming truly was a family affair, how that's evolved over time, and how that, being part of a farm, working the landscape, creating a product for use in food, and for the whole farm to table that I talked about before, it's really about these connections and the people and places and ideas and how that shaped.
And there are plans to continue with this exhibit and sort of expand on it. Tell me a little bit about that.
There is. So this is our first year in a multi-year exhibit. We plan on continuing it for the next 3 to 5 years with rotations. So we have 4 main themes this year. You mentioned maple dairy, farmstead, kind of rural life, and then supporting businesses and organizations. So certainly we'll be rotating new materials each year. Another aspect that we're hoping to take on this summer is an oral history project. We plan to conduct a series of interviews with people who have been involved in family farming in Franklin County, capture those memories and those stories before they're lost. And then we're also integrating some of this agricultural history into our educational programming. We've created a series of STEM workshops for local students and schools that we're kind of excited to bring this working landscape perspective to.
Now we should mention too that we have about a minute left. Can you share how people can get in touch with the museum and support the museum, and when the museum opens?
Absolutely. So we are opening the Farming Franklin County exhibit on June 1st. We have a reception that evening. Museums open seasonally June 1st through October 5th, 2018 this year. You can find more, of course, on our website. That's www.stamuseum.org, or give us a call at 527-7933. We're also on Facebook. If you check us out online, you can find more about our various exhibits, open hours, admissions, arranging tours, how to get more involved in those sorts of things.
Okay, wonderful, Don. And we have about 30 seconds left. Encourage people to visit this exhibit.
Yeah, I would encourage anybody to come on the June 1 date and see what we've got. And anytime during the summer months, please come by and visit and see the stories that we're going to be telling.
Terrific. I want to thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. I'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.